What was the most rebellious thing you did as a kid? Not so much rebellious as plain dumb. My older brother convinced me it was a good idea to sell the leftover fireworks that our dad bought to the neighbor's kid who was around our age, 11 or 12, but always had cash. Dad found out, and I honestly don't remember the punishment, which probably means that it was too lenient. I remember being like 17 riding around my friend's neighborhood in the middle of the night drinking beer. He lobbed an empty bottle over the car to the other side of the street and totally trashed a mailbox. We went back to look the next morning and sure enough the box was dented and taped back on. This was in China. When I was around 8, I took a taxi to the pet store and bought a hamster. Since I didn't want my parents to know, I brought the hamster back to a local park near me and raised it behind the bushes. I would go home during nap time to see it and feed it. It got eaten a few weeks later, RIP. When I was 12 to 14 years old, my friends and I would routinely take out my parents' cars when they weren't home to drive around, get food, and straight up destroy surrounding neighbors' trash cans. It would be the middle of the night and we would hit them at 30+ miles per hour, so they would go flying across their yards, littering their front lawn of trash and ultimately rendering the can unusable, so they would have to buy a new one from the city. We thought it was the funniest thing at the time, but now that I'm 21 I can't believe the shit we thought was excusable because we were young and stupid. Sold drugs on a school field trip in New York. Girl I gave him to got sick and puked at dinner. I was high off my ass at a Broadway show next to my principal. Expelled for 3 months. Barely graduated, wasn't able to walk for graduation. New York field trip was cancelled indefinitely. Ma was never so good. Worth it? IDK. Not me but my then best friend. We went out in town together and she, 15, talked her way into getting her tongue pierced. Like professionally in a tattoo studio. We went home to her dad's house that evening and she said to him, "I've got my tongue pierced." He said, "You better fucking not have." She goes, "Haha, now only messing," and ran up the stairs. Now only messing, and ran up the stairs. When I was very young, not more than 5, my parents had one of those locks on the fridge. One night they had a cake in there, so I snuck downstairs, broke the lock on the fridge, took the cake under the table, and proceeded to eat half of it before passing out on top of it. Set the school on fire. I was 10. Eat it, edgelords. Algebra teacher forced everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and got very mad at me and another student when we sat. I printed out the state law explicitly stating nobody can be forced to stand and left it in her teacher mailbox. I had a close friend who was quite odd when I was in middle school, and we had a teacher who would do things like tell you to suffer if we asked to go to the bathroom. This friend also has a penchant for knitting, and said teacher happened to have a pair of prized stuffed animals on her mini fridge. So one day when there was a play in the auditorium we snuck in her classroom and my friend stole her stuffed animals. We then took them home. My friend sewed them, so they were inside out and disfigured, and we then placed them back onto her fridge the next day. Play video games at 11, when I should be in bed at 10. Nah, JK, mine was making all the teacher seats break when they sat on it. Late 80s. At age 15, in the dead of night, grabbed mom's keys and took the car for trips around the SF Bay Area. Made about a dozen successful runs before I was busted. Cruised the Oakland Hills and watched the fog roll in to envelop the Golden Gate Bridge. When she busted me, she called my dad. They'd been divorced about 2 years and they just kinda both shook their heads. Believed me when I swore I wouldn't do it again. I didn't, and let it go. I had just discovered the cars during those weeks, and that was in the tape player while I drove. To this day when just about any Cars song comes on it takes me right back. More stupid than rebellious. I moved to Los Angeles on my own in my senior year to finish high school when in reality, I did it to get back with an old flame from middle school. I bounced from house to house, friends and family, for the entire school year, partially homeless but still managed to graduate. Made friends with some great hobos. 10/10ths were due again for the hobo friends. I'm also now married to my middle school flame. My dad has an explosive/irrational temper, so anything I did as a fuck you to my parents when I was a kid had to be very subtle. They used to drink instant coffee, so I tore open a tea bag and dumped it in. They couldn't figure out why their coffee had shit floating in it, and they never touched instant coffee again. Lol. Me. 16 and awkward AF. Mom had heard there was a dance at the school I had just started at and dressed me in dad's white shirt, tie, and some slacks and dropped me off in front of the school. I didn't go to the dance. I put the tie in my pocket and walked downtown and watched a movie instead. When mom picked me up in front of the school 2 hours later, she asked me how I liked the dance, and I told her it was great, mom. I had lots of fun. I expected a lightning bolt to strike me dead on the spot, but mom smiled and laughed. TLDR, I lied to mom and didn't die. Not sure if these count, but I occasionally threw out "my dear parent, your child did a bad thing today" slips. Felt happy every time I did, then immediately felt guilty as hell that night. I also went out with my sister to get noodles while our parents were on a date. I threw a huge fit beforehand because I thought we'd get in trouble. Obviously we didn't, cause who cares, so long as Big C's is there, and it became a regular thing after that. We kept joking about how rebellious we were as we chowed down on supposedly illegal Mac. She won't let me live down the fit though. Took a shit in my neighbor's backyard because I thought I wouldn't make it to the bathroom. I still question whether or not I would have made it. And finally, when I was older, I snuck into the office late at night to watch anime. A lot. Toonami was a good quarter of my childhood, I swear. Pretty sure there are others, but these are a few off the top of my head. Dig straight up in Minecraft. I ran away from home once. Surprisingly, I had thought to pack everything, money, license, insurance stuff, etc. Stayed with a friend for a week without telling my parents where I was. They must have gone mad. It was a miracle the cops weren't looking for me all over the region. Tried to sneak out through the garage with my bike at midnight. I did get out, but didn't do a good job at sneaking. I rode around the neighborhood for a bit, went down the nearest major street to a convenience store to get lemonade. I went to the nearby park and watched a few bunnies that belonged to a neighbor nearby. I eventually went to the playground, hit, and slept. I couldn't sleep for very long, so I just rode back home and slept in the car, which was unlocked. Thankfully my neighborhood was low crime and my bike wasn't stolen. They planned to build new houses in our neighborhood, which my friends and I didn't like, so we decided to fuck them up. We burned construction plans, copies, obviously, hid tools, moved bricks and stole the keys for an excavator. We were around 9 years old at the time. Next day my mom was outside the house when police showed up, told her what happened and asked where in the neighborhood kids live. She snitched on us, didn't know about the incident, just guessed it could/must have been us. Best part, they didn't bother about what we 9-year-olds did, but someone broke in their shed and damaged its door. Even though it wasn't us, our parents made us pay for the door. With strict parents, there were plenty of ways to be rebellious. Like I wasn't allowed to play games on the weekdays or weekends sometimes. I would sneak into my parents' room, take my DS, and then play some Pokemon on it. Then I would put it back before they even knew I took it. Also, I wasn't allowed to play teen or mature games until I was 15 or so. What I would do is go over to a friend's house. My parents would explain to theirs that I wasn't allowed to play those games. After they left, you could imagine what we did. We did exactly that. Would climb into a tree with 3 friends with a bottom of snowman size snowball and drop it on passing cars. Also, and this is really the worst one, we would piss on snowballs and throw them at cars. One time, middle of New England winter, we employed our usual piss technique, but this guy had his window down, driver side one of our bus snowballs flew right through his open window and into the car. He slammed the brakes and got out to hunt us down, but we had made a clean escape. Started signing my mother's signature on all my tests in 3rd grade too. Took till 8th grade for that one to come out. Then just lots of general stealing, vandalism, trespassing, selling some drugs. Somehow made it out with a completely clean record. Never even gotten a speeding ticket. But overall my friends and I were probably degenerates. We used to shoplift from the LCBO all the time when we were 16 and shoplift from everywhere else. We stole steaks and liquor one night and then trespassed into our high school's courtyard by climbing onto the roof and down into the courtyard so we could grill our steaks. Drugs happened a lot too. We would do anything and everything we could get our hands on. At one point my friend moved out at 16 and we would regularly hit up his place at lunch to get high on whatever we had, then go back to class. Car hopping was a thing, as well as exploding things we would steal from Canadian Tire. A large-sized butane can is quite the spectacle. I'm surprised I made it through those years, and I'm glad we have all grown past that. Those years were serious fun though. You have a message from the kid. Like and sub for nothing to be rebellious.